My father demanded I attend my golden brother's wedding, threatening to cut my tuition. They were stunned when I revealed I was already earning more than him. There are moments in life that redefine everything, when years of quiet resentment and unspoken hurt finally explode into an unforgettable confrontation. For me, it happened at my brother's wedding, a day meant for celebration, but which became the battlefield where I finally stood up for myself and shattered my family's deeply unfair dynamics forever. Let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in a sprawling suburban house just outside Chicago, the kind with a perfectly manicured lawn. My dad, Richard, insisted on maintaining himself, not because he needed to, but because he liked the neighbors seeing him out there, a testament to his discipline. He'd built his marketing firm from nothing, a fact he never let anyone forget. My mom, Eleanor, was beautiful and smart, an art history major who dreamed of working in a museum. But those dreams evaporated after she married my dad, replaced by a singular focus, creating the perfect home and raising the perfect family. At least, that was the appearance we maintained. Then there was Trevor, my older brother by 3 years. From the moment he could walk, he was groomed to follow in my father's footsteps. While other kids got bedtime stories, Trevor got lessons in business strategy and networking. By high school, he could charm any adult, offer a firm handshake, and recite my dad's business philosophy verbatim. Our house was practically a shrine to Trevor. His sports trophies, for sports he was only ever average at, gleamed in the living room. His academic awards lined the hallway. When he got into Northwestern with a decent scholarship, my parents threw a huge party. But when I got into MIT with a partial scholarship, my father just gave a curt nod. Computer science, is that what you want to waste your time on? It hit me then, a familiar ache. My earliest memory of this difference was at 7. I'd spent days on an intricate Lego castle, so proud, running to show my parents. My mom offered a distracted, "That's nice, honey." My dad barely looking up from helping Trevor with his science fair project, which he'd mostly done himself, just waved me off. "Mason, Trevor is working on something important. Go play with your toys somewhere else." My hours of careful work, dismissed as mere play. That pattern became the soundtrack of my childhood. Trevor got the newest basketball shoes because he needed them for the team. I got his old, ill-fitting ones. Trevor got a car for his 16th. I was told I could use the third family car if no one else needed it. When I was 14, I created a simple app to organize schoolwork. Half the school was using it. I told my dad, brimming with excitement, thinking, finally, something he'll appreciate. His response? "That's cute, Mason. But there are plenty of calendar apps out there. Focus on your grades instead of playing around with computer games." My mom never directly played favorites, but her enabling was just as painful. When I complained, she'd say, "Your father just wants what's best for both of you." Or, "Everyone has different talents, honey. Trevor just happens to share interests with your father." Extended family gatherings were a special kind of torture. My Aunt Catherine would always ask Trevor about his business classes, then turn to me. "Are you still doing that computer thing?" My grandfather would slip Trevor extra money, telling him how proud he was of the man he was becoming, while I, well into my teens, would get a pat on the head and a piece of candy, like a small child. By 16, I'd given up on seeking approval. My new goal? An escape plan. I threw myself into programming, staying late at school to use their computers because my home desktop was outdated. I joined every tech club, entered every competition. I built websites for local businesses for small fees, saving every penny. While Trevor attended business networking events with my father, I was teaching myself Python, Java, and C++. There was one flicker of hope, I remember. Junior year, I won a regional coding competition. The local paper even ran a small article. My mom cut it out, beaming, and put it on the refrigerator. For a moment, I felt seen. Then my dad came home, glanced at the article, and delivered the gut punch. Computers are becoming a commodity skill. Everyone can code these days. Trevor just secured an internship at Deloitte for the summer. That's how you build a career. The article was gone from the refrigerator the next day. Despite everything, I never hated Trevor. He was as much a product of our environment as I was. Occasionally, when our parents weren't around, he'd show glimpses of genuine brotherly affection. He once stood up for me against a bully. Another time, he secretly helped me fix my bike after a failed ramp jump. But those moments were rare, always evaporating the second my father appeared. By senior year, I had one goal: get into a top computer science program as far away from home as possible. MIT, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon. When the acceptance letter from MIT arrived with a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. My ticket out was secured. Even then, my father found a way to diminish it. East Coast schools are overrated, too theoretical. Not enough real-world application, he said at dinner. But if that's what you want, I suppose asterisk will make it work financially, asterisk. Those words, will make it work financially, would become a chain around my neck for years. Every tuition conversation came with reminders of their sacrifice, even though I knew they could easily afford it. Every phone call home included questions about whether I was taking practical courses. What they didn't know was that their golden boy, Trevor, wasn't the only one with ambition. I had plans of my own, and MIT was just the beginning. Arriving at MIT felt like stepping onto another planet. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who didn't look at me strangely when I talked about programming for fun. My roommate, Jacob, was developing his own video game. AITA, across the hall, had built a robot that could navigate obstacle courses. These were my people. My father's enthusiasm for my college choice remained non-existent. During move-in day, while other parents took photos and helped decorate dorm rooms, my dad was mostly on business calls. Before leaving, he pulled me aside for what I hoped would be a heartfelt moment. Instead, remember, Mason, this is costing us $60,000 a year after your scholarship. Make it count. And none of those startup pipe dreams. Get a stable job at a good company when you graduate. He handed me my first semesters, spending money in an envelope, as if I were still a child receiving an allowance. My mom hugged me. Goodbye, tears in her eyes. We're proud of you, she whispered, but only when my father was out of earshot. Despite his warnings, I threw myself into everything MIT offered. Maximum course loads, coding club, late nights in the lab working on personal projects. While other freshmen partied, I was building prototype apps and learning about venture capital. During my sophomore year, I met Professor Jenkins in an advanced algorithms class. Unlike most professors, Jenkins took a personal interest. After I aced his notoriously difficult midterm, he asked me to stay after class. You have a gift, Mason, he said, not just for coding, but for seeing problems that need solving. What are you doing with that talent outside of class? Hesitantly, I showed him an app one was developing that helped students find the shortest routes between classes, avoiding bad weather, a godsend in Boston winters. He studied it for minutes, asking insightful questions. This is commercial quality work, he said finally. Have you considered bringing this to market? That conversation changed everything. Professor Jenkins became my mentor, introducing me to alumni who had launched successful tech startups and helping me refine my ideas. With his guidance, I polished my campus navigation app, added features like indoor mapping, and launched it officially halfway through sophomore year. To my shock, it took off. Within weeks, over 80% of MIT students were using it. Then other Boston schools started reaching out. Harvard, Boston University, Northeastern. By the end of the semester, I had adapted the app for 5 different campuses and was generating modest but real income from premium features and targeted advertising. During winter break, I returned home with my first real earnings, about $20,000 sitting in my bank account. At dinner, my father asked the usual questions about grades and job prospects. Trevor, now working at my father's firm, talked endlessly about the small accounts he was managing. Mason, have you started looking at internships yet? Trevor had 3 by this point in his college career, my father said, between bites of pot roast. I considered telling them about my app's success, but stopped myself. I saw the dismissive look already forming on his face. He'd find a way to minimize it, to compare it unfavorably to Trevor's achievements. Instead, I simply said I was exploring options. Don't wait too long. The good positions fill up fast, Trevor added helpfully, completely unaware I was already earning more than his entry-level salary. When I returned to MIT, I decided to keep my growing success to myself. I created an LLC, got proper accounting, and filed taxes independently. Professor Jenkins connected me with a business attorney who helped me navigate the legal aspects. By junior year, I had expanded my original app into a comprehensive campus life platform. It now included features for study groups, dining hall ratings, and ride shares. I launched it at 15 more schools nationwide. The money started flowing in. Seriously, I hired fellow students as contractors and worked with a small marketing team. By the end of junior year, my company was valued at over $2 million, and I had personally taken home over $300,000 in profits, all while my father continued to send his condescending quarterly tuition payments with notes, reminding me how fortunate I was to have his support. During holiday visits home, the dynamic remained unchanged. Trevor continued his ascent at my father's company, managing actual client accounts, being groomed for an executive position. Family conversations revolved around his accomplishments, his girlfriend Jessica, daughter of one of my father's business associates, and the house he was planning to buy with my parents' generous loan that we all knew would never be repaid. I sat through it all quietly, no longer feeling the sting I once had. I had found confidence in my own path, validation from people whose opinions actually mattered to me. Professor Jenkins believed in me. My small team looked up to me. My users appreciated the products I created. Back at MIT, I had built a circle of friends who became the family I chose. There was Jacob, my roommate and best friend. Diana, a brilliant economics major who helped me understand the financial side of my business. Raj, whose cybersecurity expertise proved invaluable. And then there was Zoe. I met Zoe at a hackathon during junior year. She was a cognitive science major, fascinated by human-tech interaction. She approached me after a demo of my latest project, asking insightful questions about user experience that I hadn't considered. We started dating a month later, and for the first time, I opened up completely about my family situation. Zoe came from a supportive household, parents who celebrated her achievements and respected her choices. She couldn't fathom parents who played favorites so blatantly. You know you don't need their approval anymore, right? She said one night as we walked along the Charles River. You've built something amazing on your own terms. I know, I replied, but there's still this little kid inside me who wants his dad to be proud of him. Zoe squeezed my hand. That's understandable. Just don't let that kid make your adult decisions. By senior year, my company had grown beyond what I could handle as a full-time student. With Professor Jenkins' guidance, I brought on a CEO with experience scaling startups, maintaining my position as founder and product architect. The company raised a small round of funding, pushing its valuation to $15 million. My personal net worth, on paper at least, was now over $5 million. All while still receiving those quarterly reminders from my father about how generously he was supporting my education. I considered telling my family numerous times, especially my mother, who I thought might genuinely be happy for me. But something always held me back. Part of it was knowing my father would find a way to claim credit or diminish my achievement. Part of it was simple self-preservation. For the first time in my life, I had something that was entirely mine, unsullied by family dynamics. As graduation approached, I faced a decision. The company was taking off, with acquisition offers already coming in from larger tech firms. I could cash out and be set for life before my 23rd birthday. Or I could stay on, guide its growth, and potentially build something even bigger. I decided to defer the decision by applying to MIT's graduate program. I wanted to deepen my technical knowledge while giving myself time to consider my options. When I was accepted with a full scholarship based on my academic performance, a weight lifted. I would no longer need my father's financial support, tenuous and conditional as it always was. I planned to tell them at graduation, to finally reveal what I had built while they thought I was just playing with computers. But before I could, Trevor's engagement announcement changed everything. The call came on a Sunday evening in early April, just as I was wrapping up a problem set. My mother's name flashed on my phone, which was unusual. Our communications typically happened on scheduled Saturday morning calls. "Mason, wonderful news," she exclaimed, without preamble. "Trevor proposed to Jessica last night. They're getting married in June." That's great, Mom, I said, genuinely happy for my brother despite our complicated relationship. Tell him congratulations from me. You can tell him yourself at dinner on Friday. We expect you home this weekend for the engagement celebration. I paused, mentally reviewing my schedule. Mom, I have a major project due next Monday. I can't just drop everything and fly home. There was a moment of silence before her voice returned, noticeably cooler. This is your brother's engagement, Mason. Family comes first. I understand that, but my education is important too. I'll try to make it to the actual wedding. But this weekend is impossible. I heard my father's voice in the background, demanding to know what was going on. Then he was on the phone. Mason, what is this about you not coming home? Your brother is engaged to Jessica Davis. Her father is one of our biggest clients. This dinner is important. I'm sorry, Dad, but I have academic commitments I can't break. Academic commitments. He scoffed. Trevor is cementing business relationships that will benefit this family for years. Surely your little computer assignment can wait. And there it was, the same dismissal I'd heard my entire life. My work, my priorities, my choices, always less important than Trevor's. I'm sorry, but I can't make it. I'll call Trevor separately. The calls continued all week. My mother tried guilt, reminiscing about how close Trevor and I had been as children, conveniently forgetting the years of favoritism that had driven us apart. My father alternated between commands and veiled threats about how my absence would reflect poorly on the family. Trevor himself called midweek, sounding genuinely disappointed. Come on, little brother. It would mean a lot to have you there. Jessica's excited to finally meet you. I've met Jessica twice already. I reminded him, at Christmas 2 years ago and at your graduation party. Oh, right, he said, and I could practically hear him wincing. Well, things are different now. She'll be family, and Dad's inviting some important people. It would look weird if you were missing. There it was. Not. I want my brother there for this important moment, but it would look weird to important people if you were absent. Some things never changed. The final ultimatum came Thursday night. I was in the lab when my phone rang. Seeing my father's name, I excused myself. Mason, I'm only going to say this once, he began without greeting. Your brother's wedding is on June 15th. You will be there, and you will participate as a groomsman, as Trevor has requested. If you cannot commit to being there, I will be forced to reconsider my financial support for your graduate studies. My heart raced as anger and indignation flooded through me. Are you seriously threatening to cut my tuition if I don't attend a wedding? I'm saying that family obligations go both ways. We support you, and you support the family. It's that simple. What my father didn't know was that I didn't need his financial support anymore. My graduate program was fully funded, and my company was thriving. But something kept me from revealing that just yet. Fine, I said after a long pause. I will be at the wedding and the engagement dinner tomorrow. That's impossible, but I will be at the wedding. He huffed in displeasure, but accepted the compromise. After hanging up, I leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Zoe found me there. A few minutes later. Everything okay? She asked, concern evident. I filled her in on the conversation and the ultimatum. As I spoke, I realized I was making a decision. I think it's time. They knew the truth. I said finally, about everything. Zoe squeezed my hand. Are you sure? You've kept this separate for good reasons. I'm tired of the power imbalance, the constant threat of withdrawing financial support. It's time to reset the relationship. That night, I called Professor Jenkins. He had become not just a mentor, but a father figure, offering the guidance and support my actual father never had. Are you sure this is about resetting the relationship and not about proving your worth? He asked gently. Because those are very different goals with different approaches. His question made me pause. Maybe both, I admitted. Is that wrong? Not wrong, just complicated. Money and family are always a volatile mix. Whatever you decide, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Not to hurt them or prove something, but to establish healthy boundaries. I took his advice to heart as I made preparations. Over the following weeks, I gathered documentation of my company's success, not to boast, but to establish facts. I prepared answers for the questions that would inevitably come. Most importantly, I worked on what I would say and how I would say it, striving for assertiveness without aggression. As the wedding approached, the pressure intensified. My mother called with endless questions about my travel. My father emailed a detailed schedule of events. Trevor sent awkward texts about bachelor party plans. I booked my flight to arrive the morning of the rehearsal dinner, planning to leave immediately after the wedding reception. 2 days was all I could stomach. The night before my departure, Zoe surprised me. She was coming with me. You shouldn't have to face this alone, she said when I protested. Besides, I'm curious to meet this family I've heard so much about. Having Zoe by my side changed everything. As we packed, I realized I was no longer the defenseless child or the overlooked teenager. I was a successful adult with a supportive partner, returning not as a supplicant, but as an equal. When our plane touched down in Chicago, I felt a strange calm. Whatever happened in the next 48 hours, I knew I would leave with the truth. Finally in the open. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more power imbalance. We checked into our hotel, deliberately choosing not to stay at my parents' house, despite my mother's insistence. As we dressed for the rehearsal dinner, Zoe caught me staring at my reflection, ready to show them who Mason really is, she asked with an encouraging smile. I nodded, adjusting my tie. More than ready. The reunion with my extended family at the rehearsal dinner was predictably uncomfortable. Aunt Catherine immediately asked if I was still studying computers. Uncle Robert wanted to know if I had a real job lined up. Cousins I barely recognized made awkward conversation about Boston weather. Through it all, Zoe was my anchor, charming everyone she met while subtly redirecting condescending questions. She had a way of mentioning my accomplishments that seemed natural rather than boastful, leaving family members slightly confused about the disconnect between their perception of me and the reality she described. My father maintained his usual controlling presence, dictating seating arrangements and dominating conversations. My mother fluttered anxiously. Trevor seemed genuinely happy, though I noticed he still deferred to our father on most decisions. As the night wound down, Trevor pulled me aside. Thanks for coming, Mason. I know you and Dad have your issues, but it means a lot that you're here. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the brother I might have had in a different family. I wouldn't miss it, I said, and meant it despite everything. That night, back at the hotel, I reviewed my plan one last time. The confrontation was inevitable now, but I was determined it would happen on my terms. Whatever happens tomorrow, Zoe said as we got ready for bed, remember that. You've built a good life that has nothing to do with their approval. I kissed her gently. With you in it, how could it not be good? Morning brought bright sunshine and the beginning of what promised to be the most consequential day in my family's recent history, though none of them knew it. Yet, the morning of Trevor's wedding dawned clear and unseasonably warm. From our hotel room, I could see the country club, its manicured grounds stretching out. Everything looked perfect, exactly as my father would have demanded. Zoe and I arrived early. The groomsmen were gathering in a luxurious suite. Trevor greeted me with a hug that felt more genuine. Mason, you made it, he said, clapping me on the back. Guys, this is my little brother, the MIT genius. The introduction caught me off guard. Trevor had never referred to me as a genius before, at least not without irony. The other groomsmen, mostly Trevor's fraternity brothers, gave polite nods before returning to conversations about golf and stock portfolios. As we got dressed, I noticed Trevor seemed nervous, fidgeting with his bow tie. Everything okay? I asked. Yeah, just wedding jitters, I guess. He lowered his voice. Can I tell you something weird? I'm kind of terrified of getting married. No, not that part, the rest of it. Dad's been talking about how I'll take over more client relationships after the wedding, how marrying into the Davis family opens new doors. Sometimes it feels like this wedding is more of a business merger than he trailed off, looking embarrassed. For perhaps the first time, I felt genuine sympathy for my golden child brother. He might have received all the attention and advantages, but he had also shouldered all the expectations. Trevor, do you love Jessica? I asked directly. His face softened. God, yes. She's amazing. Way too good for me, honestly. Then focus on that today. The rest is just noise. He considered this, then nodded slowly. When did my little brother get so wise? Before I could respond, my father burst into the room, already issuing directives. Photographer wants groomsman. Photos in 10 minutes. Trevor, your bow tie is crooked. Mason, where is your boutonniere? Just like that, the moment of connection with my brother evaporated. We were back to our assigned roles. Trevor, the golden son. Me, the afterthought. The next few hours passed in a blur of photographs and my father's increasingly stressed commands. Zoe found me just before we lined up. She looked stunning. How are you holding up? She asked, straightening my tie as an excuse to talk privately. Surprisingly, okay. Had an actual human moment. With Trevor earlier, before Dad shut it down. She smiled. Remember, you're here for Trevor today. The rest can wait until the reception. The ceremony itself was beautiful. Jessica looked radiant. And the genuine joy on Trevor's face when he saw her made me wonder again what kind of person he might have become without our father's influence. They had written their own vows, simple but heartfelt. Our mother cried. Our father sat rigid and proud, like a king overseeing a diplomatic alliance. As we processed out, I caught Zoe's eye. She gave me a subtle thumbs up that bolstered my confidence for what was to come. The cocktail hour was held on the terrace. My father worked the room like a politician, introducing Trevor to important business contacts. My mother floated alongside him, the perfect corporate wife. I mingled awkwardly with distant relatives and family friends who seemed surprised I existed. You're Trevor's brother? One of my father's colleagues asked, peering at me over his gin and tonic. Richard never mentioned you were so grown up. What are you in college? Finishing my master's degree at MIT, actually, I replied. Oh, MIT, the man said with exaggerated impression. Planning to join the family business after? Tech department could always use smart young blood. I have other plans, I said simply. As cocktail hour progressed, I noticed my father watching me, his expression calculating. He had noticed me talking with his associates and seemed concerned about what I might be saying. The irony was not lost on me. For years, he'd ignored my existence, and now he was worried about my influence. The reception began. Trevor and Jessica were introduced as Mr. and Mrs. Trevor Wilson too. Enthusiastic applause. Our table was positioned prominently at the front, with my father holding court. Jessica's parents, the DeVises, joined us, along with both sets of grandparents and Zoe. My father had tried to seat Zoe at a distant table, but I had insisted she join us, one of the few battles I'd won. Dinner was an elaborate 5-course affair. Between courses, my father engaged Mr. Davis about potential business synergies now that their children had united their families. The Wilson-Davis partnership has a nice ring to it, doesn't it, Henry? He said, raising his glass. Trevor looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. I sat quietly, observing the dynamics I'd grown up with, now playing out in front of Zoe, who occasionally squeezed my hand under the table when my father said something particularly obnoxious. The alcohol flowed freely, loosening tongues. After the main course, my father clinked his glass and stood for what everyone assumed would be a standard father-of-the-groom toast. I immediately tensed, knowing he was incapable of speaking publicly without turning it into a performance of his own success. For those who don't know me, I'm Richard Wilson, Trevor's proud father, he began. Today is the culmination of everything a father hopes for his son. What followed was less a toast and more a highlight reel of Trevor's life, carefully curated to reflect well on my father's parenting. Trevor's academic achievements, his athletic prowess, his business acumen, all presented as evidence of Wilson family excellence. And now Trevor joins Davis Marketing Solutions with Wilson Consulting to create what I am certain will be an unstoppable force in the industry. My father continued, drawing uncomfortable laughter from guests who hadn't expected a business pitch in a wedding toast. Then, to my surprise, he turned his attention to me. We are blessed to have both our sons with us. Today, Mason has come all the way from MIT to be here. The sudden spotlight made me sit up straighter. This was unexpected. While Trevor has followed in my footsteps in the business world, Mason has chosen a different path with his computer studies. There was a slight, but unmistakable, diminutive tone in how he said computer studies, as if I were dabbling in a hobby. Perhaps, someday soon he will tell us what his plans are after graduation. The tech support department at Wilson Consulting always has an opening for family he added with a chuckle that several guests mirrored. I felt Zoe stiffen beside me. The dismissal was so casual, so practiced, that my father probably didn't even realize how belittling it was. But the last 4 years had changed me. I was no longer the child who would silently absorb his condescension. As my father continued his toast, eventually returning his focus to Trevor and Jessica, I made a decision. The confrontation I had been planning would happen tonight, but not as a reaction to his provocation. It would happen on my terms, when I was ready. After dinner, as the dancing began, I noticed my father holding court with a group of business associates, Trevor dutifully at his side. My mother was chatting with the wedding planner. I turned to Zoe. I think it's time. She searched my face. Are you sure? You can always wait for a more private moment. No, I said firmly. They've made my life public property all these years. This happens now on my terms. Zoe nodded, understanding. I'm right behind you. I approached the circle of businessmen. As I drew near, I heard my father mid-anecdote about Trevor's first big client meeting. Excuse me, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. I'd like to speak with my father for a moment. My father looked annoyed but maintained his public smile. Mason, we're in the middle of something important here. Yes, I heard. You were just telling everyone about Trevor's promising future. I thought perhaps you might be interested in hearing about mine as well. A flash of irritation crossed his face, quickly masked. This is hardly the time or place, son. Actually, I think it's perfect, I replied, not backing down. You just publicly speculated about my career prospects in your toast. I thought I should clarify a few things. The businessman looked uncomfortable, sensing the tension. Trevor's expression was a mix of confusion and concern. Mason, my father said in a warning tone, this is your brother's wedding. I am well aware, and I couldn't be happier for Trevor and Jessica. I turned to my brother. Trevor, I apologize for this timing, but I think it's important. To my surprise, Trevor nodded. It's okay, Mason. Say what you need to say. With that permission, I turned back to my father. The moment of truth had arrived. Dad, for as long as I can remember, you have treated my interest in computer science as a childish hobby, something to be tolerated, but not respected. I began, keeping my voice calm but firm. You have threatened to cut my tuition as a way to control my choices, including whether I attend family events. My father's face reddened slightly, aware of the audience witnessing this confrontation. Mason, this is inappropriate. We can discuss family matters privately. No, I don't think we can. You have never given my choices or achievements the same public acknowledgement you have given Trevor's. So, perhaps it's time I shared a few things publicly. By now, several nearby guests had quieted to listen. Jessica's father looked particularly interested. 4 years ago, during my sophomore year at MIT, I developed an app that helped students navigate campus efficiently. It started small, just at MIT, but it grew. Today, that app has evolved into Campus Connect, a platform used at over 200 universities nationwide. There was a murmur of recognition from some of the younger guests. Campus Connect had become quite well known in college circles, though I had deliberately kept my name out of the press. That little company I founded now has 42 employees. Last year, we secured Series B funding at a valuation of $68 million. As the majority shareholder, my personal net worth is currently just over $22 million. The silence that followed was absolute. My father's face went from red to pale in seconds. Trevor's mouth literally hung open. My mother, who had drifted over during my speech, grabbed the back of a chair for support. I don't need your money for graduate school, Dad. My program is fully funded. And even if it weren't, I could pay for it myself many times over. I don't need your approval for my career choices, and I certainly don't need your threats to ensure my attendance at family events. Mr. Davis, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. Wait, you founded Campus Connect? My daughter uses that at Northwestern. Says she can't live without it. Yes, sir, I replied politely. We launched at Northwestern during our third expansion phase. My father, recovering slightly, attempted to regain control. Well, this is certainly surprising news, Mason. Why would you keep this from your family? The question was so disingenuous I almost laughed. Really, Dad? You've spent my entire life dismissing my interests as unimportant. The last time I showed you a programming project, you called it playing with computers and told me to focus on real work like Trevor. Trevor, to his credit, looked genuinely distressed. Mason, I had no idea. This is incredible. Thanks, Trevor. And I'm sorry to do this at your wedding. This isn't about overshadowing your day. Jessica, who had appeared at Trevor's side, surprisingly smiled. Are you kidding? Finding out my new brother-in-law is a tech millionaire is the least dramatic thing that's happened in this family merger. I mean, wedding. The joke broke some of the tension, earning nervous laughter. My mother finally found her voice. $22 million? Mason, why would you not tell us? Because it was never about the money, Mom. It was about being taken seriously, about having my choices respected, about not being the family disappointment when I was building something valuable. You were never a disappointment, she protested weakly. Then why did you let Dad treat me like one? The question hung in the air, heavy with years of unspoken hurt. My father, ever the businessman, was already shifting strategies. I could practically see him recalculating my value in the family equation. Son, this is remarkable news. You should have told us. We could have helped, provided connections, guidance. That's exactly why I didn't tell you. I replied evenly. This was something I needed to build on my own, without it becoming another extension of Wilson Consulting or another opportunity for you to take credit. A flash of anger crossed his face at this direct challenge to his authority, quickly replaced by a more calculated expression. Well, we are certainly proud of what you've accomplished. Imagine what our companies could do together with your technology expertise and our market presence. And there it was, the attempt to absorb and control, to turn my independent success into a family achievement, primarily his achievement. Some things never changed. Thank you. But Campus Connect is doing quite well on its own. We're actually in preliminary acquisition talks with several major tech companies. This was only partially true. The discussions were very early, but I needed to shut down his takeover attempt immediately. Trevor, seeming to sense the familiar pattern, surprisingly stepped in. Dad, this is amazing news about Mason, but maybe we should just celebrate it without immediately trying to fold it into the family business. This unexpected support from my brother momentarily stunned both me and our father. Jessica squeezed Trevor's arm approvingly. My father recovered quickly, his public persona reasserting itself. Of course. This is wonderful news. A toast to Mason's success. He raised his glass, seamlessly transitioning into the role of proud father, as if he hadn't spent years belittling my ambitions. The surrounding guests, relieved that the tense moment seemed to be passing, raised their glasses as well. To Mason, several voices echoed. As the reception returned to normal, my father leaned in close to me. We need to talk privately, he said, his voice low. The library. 5 minutes. I nodded, having expected this. The public confrontation was only the beginning. Zoe, who had remained supportively at my side, squeezed my hand. Want me to come with you? No. This part one need to do alone, I replied. But thank you for being here for the hard part. As my father walked away, Trevor approached me, shaking his head in disbelief. $22 million? Seriously? Give or take, depending on the day's valuation, I said with a small smile. Why didn't you tell me? I mean, I get why you didn't tell Dad, but me? The hurt in his voice was genuine, making me reconsider our relationship. Perhaps Trevor had been as much a prisoner of our father's expectations as I had been, just in a different way. Honestly, I wasn't sure whose side you'd be on. You've always been Dad's son, in every way. Trevor winced. That's fair, I guess. But Mason, this is incredible what you've built. I want to hear everything about it. When all this wedding craziness is over. I'd like that, I said, surprised to find I meant it. As Trevor rejoined his bride, I steeled myself for the private conversation to come. The public revelation had gone better than expected, but the real test would be facing my father one-on-one, away from the moderating presence of witnesses. 5 minutes later, I entered the country club's wood-paneled library, where my father was waiting, a tumbler of scotch in his hand. Another glass sat on the desk. $22 million. he said without preamble. And you kept this from your family. Do you have any idea how that makes us look? Of all the possible reactions, this was perhaps the most predictable. Not pride in my achievement, not regret for his dismissal, but concern about appearances. That's what concerns you right now? How it looks. Family businesses are built on trust, Mason, on sharing information, working together. We don't have a family business, Dad. You have a business that Trevor works for. I built something separate, something mine. With an education I paid for, he countered. With a partial scholarship and student loans I have since repaid. I corrected him. But yes, you contributed, and I am grateful for that support. What I am not grateful for is how you used that financial support as a weapon whenever I didn't fall in line with your expectations. My father took a long sip of his scotch, visibly trying to control his temper. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted to one I recognized from his business negotiations. Reasonable, conciliatory, but with an underlying calculation. Perhaps I have been too hard on you, too dismissive of your interests. But you have to understand, Mason, I only wanted what was best for you. The tech industry is volatile, unpredictable. I wanted you to have stability. No, you wanted me to be like Trevor, to follow your plan, validate your choices. He didn't deny this, which was something. Instead, he tried a different approach. Well, clearly your path has worked out extraordinarily well, and I am proud of you, son. Truly. But I wish you had trusted us with this information sooner. We are family. The words sounded right, but something in his expression didn't match. There was no real reckoning with his past behavior, just an adjustment to new information that changed my value. In his eyes, Dad, I'm not looking for your approval anymore. I don't need it. What I want is respect. Respect for my choices, my boundaries, my independence. Can you give me that? He considered this, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. You have certainly earned my respect with what you have accomplished. But family involves compromise, Mason. Give and take. I've done all the giving, and you've done all the taking for 26 years. I replied evenly. That changes now. We stared at each other across the room, two adults rather than father and son. I realized with sudden clarity that we might never have the relationship I had longed for as a child. He might never be capable of loving me for who I was rather than what I could do for him or his reputation. And for the first time, I was completely at peace with that. I will always be your son, I said finally. And I will always care about this family. But from now on, I participate on my terms, not because of financial threats or guilt trips. My father nodded, slowly, accepting, if not fully embracing, this new reality. Fair enough, though. I hope you will consider some collaboration between our companies in the future. The synergy potential is significant. Even now, he couldn't help thinking in business terms. Some things would never change. But I had changed, and that was enough. We should get back to the reception, I said, leaving my untouched scotch on the desk. This is Trevor's day, after all. As we returned to the celebration, I felt a weight lift that I had carried for as long as I could remember. The truth was out for better or worse. What happened next would be on my terms, not his. Trevor caught my eye across the room and raised his glass slightly in acknowledgement. Perhaps there was hope for at least one relationship to be rebuilt in this family. Zoe met me halfway across the dance floor. How did it go? I pulled her into a dance, using the movement and music to shield our conversation. About as well as could be expected. He's still my father, with all that entails, but something has shifted, for the more honest, at least. And that's a start. The remainder of the wedding reception passed in a blur of curious glances and whispered conversations. News of my revelation had spread quickly, turning me from Trevor's forgettable brother into an object of intense interest. Several of my father's business associates found excuses to chat with me, suddenly discovering my existence after years of looking through me. My mother hovered nearby, clearly distressed but unsure how to approach me. When she finally worked up the courage, her eyes were rimmed with tears. Why did you never tell me, Mason? All this time I thought you were struggling, that you needed our help. The hurt in her voice was genuine, but it also reflected her own blindness to the family dynamics she had helped maintain. Would it have made a difference, Mom? Would you have stood up to Dad if I had told you? She flinched at the directness of my question. I always tried to support both you boys equally. No, you didn't, I said gently, but firmly. You let Dad favor Trevor openly and never said a word. You enabled the situation even if you didn't create it. Tears spilled onto her cheeks. I never meant to hurt you. I just wanted peace in the family. Peace built on inequality isn't really peace, Mom. It's just suppression. She dabbed at her eyes. I don't know how to fix this. It starts with acknowledging what happened, with seeing me clearly for who I am, not who Dad wanted me to be. She nodded, visibly processing. This. You've grown into such a strong man. I wish I could take credit, but I think you did that. Despite us, not because of us. It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. And in that moment, I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps my relationship with my mother might be salvageable in a way my relationship with my father might not be. Trevor found me as the reception was winding down, Jessica at his side. They were leaving soon for their honeymoon. So, tech millionaire, Trevor said, shaking his head in amazement. All this time, I was feeling sorry for my struggling student brother. That was easier than explaining the truth. I replied with a shrug. For what it's worth, I think what you did was incredible, Jessica interjected, building something from nothing on your own terms. Trevor talks about doing that someday, but she glanced at her new husband with affectionate exasperation. But Dad has my next 15 years mapped out at the firm. Trevor finished with a grimace. Speaking of which, he's in full damage control mode right now. I've never seen him work a room so hard. I glanced across the hall where my father was indeed engaged in animated conversation, likely spinning my revelation to his advantage. Let him spin, I said. I'm done worrying about how he frames my choices. Trevor hesitated, then asked the question I could see had been bothering him. Are we okay, Mason? You and me? I know I wasn't always the best brother. The simple acknowledgement meant more than I had expected. We're okay, Trevor. We were both just playing the roles we were assigned. Maybe now we can figure out who we actually are to each other. He pulled me into a spontaneous hug, something he hadn't done since we were children. I want that. When we get back from the honeymoon, let's have dinner, just the two of us. No Dad, no company talk. I'd like that, I said, genuinely touched. After Trevor and Jessica departed, Zoe and I returned to our hotel, emotionally exhausted but relieved that the confrontation was finally over. How do you feel? She asked as we collapsed onto the bed. Liberated, I answered after a moment's reflection. Like I've been holding my breath for years and can finally exhale. The next morning brought a flurry of messages. Trevor sent a brief text from the airport, still processing. Proud of you, bro, talk when we get back. My mother called, sounding tentative and emotional. I didn't sleep last night thinking about everything you said. I need to apologize properly, Mason. Not just for last night, but for all of it. We'll have that conversation, Mom, but it needs to be in person when things have settled down. Of course. She agreed quickly. Whenever you're ready. Noticeably absent was any contact from my father. I wasn't surprised. He was likely regrouping, recalculating, planning his next move. Richard Wilson didn't apologize. He strategized. Zoe and I had planned to stay one more night, but by mutual agreement, we changed our flights and returned to Boston early. I needed the sanctuary of my own space, my chosen life, to process everything. As we packed, Zoe paused, holding my suit. Do you think anything will really change with your family? I considered this carefully. With my mother, maybe. She seems genuinely shaken. With Trevor, possibly, though that depends on whether he can ever truly step out from under Dad's shadow. With my father, I shook my head. He might adjust his tactics, but people like him don't fundamentally change. They just adapt their strategy. On the flight back, I received an unexpected email from Mr. Davis, Jessica's father. Impressed by what you have built with Campus Connect. Would be interested in discussing potential synergies if you are ever open to conversation. No pressure, and no involvement from your father's company necessary. It was a small validation that felt significant. My success being recognized independently on its own merits. When we landed in Boston, the familiar skyline greeted us like an old friend. Cambridge, with its academic energy and innovation culture, had become more of a home to me than Neepville ever was. This was where I had found myself, built myself, away from the shadow of family expectations. The next day, I met with Professor Jenkins, filling him in. "Sounds like you handled it with remarkable composure," he said. "How do you feel about it now?" With a bit of distance. "Relieved mostly, but also sad in a way I didn't expect. Like I'm mourning the father-son relationship I never really had, and probably never will." He nodded thoughtfully. "That's a very mature perspective. Many people spend their entire lives trying to win approval from parents who are constitutionally incapable of giving it. Recognizing that reality is painful, but ultimately freeing." "So what happens now?" I asked, suddenly feeling adrift despite the certainty I had felt during the confrontation. "Now you live your life on your terms. Set boundaries where needed. Open doors where possible, but always from a position of self-knowledge and strength, not from that wounded child place." His words resonated deeply. The confrontation had not been an ending, but a beginning. The start of authentic relationships based on who we truly were, not the roles we had been assigned. Over the next few weeks, the ripple effects of my revelation continued to spread. Trevor called from his honeymoon, sounding more relaxed than I'd heard him in years, away from our father's influence. "I keep thinking about what you said at the wedding," he admitted, "about building something of your own. I have ideas, Mason. Things I've wanted to try that Dad always dismissed as too risky. Maybe it's time you explored those ideas," I suggested. "You're married now, building your own family. You get to make your own choices." He sighed heavily. "It's not that simple when you're in the family business. Everything is entangled. Money, relationships, expectations. It's only entangled if you let it be," I countered gently. "Trust me on this." My mother began sending tentative text messages, sharing small details of her day, and asking genuine questions about my life and work. It was awkward at first, like we were learning a new language together. But slowly, a more authentic connection began to form. My father, predictably, took a different approach. 2 weeks after the wedding, I received a formal email from him with the subject line, "Wilson Family Trust Restructuring. In light of your recent financial disclosures." The email began, "We are updating the family trust to reflect your self-sufficiency, as you no longer require educational support. Those funds will be redirected to more pressing family needs." It was so perfectly on brand that I actually laughed out loud when I read it. No acknowledgement of his behavior, no apology for the years of dismissal, just a business-like adjustment to new information. He was removing the one piece of leverage he thought he had over me, presenting it as a logical business decision rather than the petty retaliation it clearly was. I replied with equal formality, "I understand and support this decision. Thank you for the educational assistance you have provided thus far." What my father didn't know was that his attempt to punish me by cutting financial ties actually gave me exactly what I wanted: clean, clear boundaries, and independence. Sometimes winning comes in unexpected forms. 6 months after Trevor's wedding, I sat in my Cambridge apartment looking out at the first snowfall of winter. My life had settled into a new normal that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. I was completing my final semester of graduate studies while serving as a part-time advisor to Campus Connect, which had continued to thrive under the CEO I had appointed. Zoe and I had moved in together, turning my formerly sparse apartment into a warm, inviting space that felt like a true home. Our relationship had deepened through the family crisis, her steady support giving me strength I didn't know I needed. The changes in my family dynamics were still evolving, some more successful than others. Trevor had surprised everyone by announcing he was stepping back from our father's company to start his own boutique marketing firm, focusing on sustainability-minded businesses. The decision had caused a major rift with our father, but had given Trevor a new energy and purpose I had never seen in him before. "I've been following someone else's dream my whole life," he told me during one of our now regular phone calls. "Watching you build something meaningful on your own terms made me realize I could do the same." Jessica fully supported his decision, even taking a reduced role in her father's company to help Trevor launch his venture. They seemed genuinely happy, their relationship stronger, without the weight of our father's expectations. My mother had undergone perhaps the most unexpected transformation. After 30 years of deferring to my father, she had enrolled in art history courses at the local community college, rekindling the passion she had abandoned after marriage. She called me regularly, our conversations no longer superficial exchanges, but genuine efforts to understand each other. I keep thinking about all the years I missed really knowing you, she said during one particularly emotional call. I was so focused on keeping the peace that I never stood up for what was right. Mom, we can't change the past, I told her gently, but we get to decide what happens now. As for my father, our relationship had settled into a state of distant formality. He had eventually processed my financial independence, not as a personal achievement, but as a fortunate accident that reflected well on his genetics, if not his parenting. In his mind, my success had retroactively become part of the Wilson family legacy, a narrative revision that required no accountability on his part. I had made peace with this reality. Some people can't give what they don't possess, and my father simply didn't have the capacity for the kind of emotional honesty that real reconciliation would require. I maintained polite but bounded contact, protecting myself from his attempts to control or diminish, while leaving the door open for any genuine change that might someday occur. The Thanksgiving after the wedding marked the first real test of our new family dynamic. After much discussion with Zoe, I agreed to host my parents and Trevor and Jessica in Boston rather than returning to Illinois, having them in my territory, seeing my actual life rather than their assumptions about it, seemed important. The gathering was awkward at times, but ultimately productive. My father made several attempts to reassert old patterns, asking pointed questions about my company's exit strategy and suggesting potential acquirers. Rather than becoming defensive, I simply provided brief factual responses and changed the subject. Actually, I'm more excited about the scholarship foundation I'm establishing for first-generation tech students. It launches next semester. This announcement sparked genuine interest from everyone except my father. The scholarship had been my way of paying forward the opportunities one had received, specifically targeting students from backgrounds where their technical interests might be discouraged or dismissed as impractical. That's wonderful, Mason, my mother said sincerely. Using your success to help others is the best possible outcome. Trevor raised his glass to giving others the chance to build something meaningful on their own terms. That's a legacy worth creating. My father said nothing, but I no longer needed his approval to know my choices were valid. After dinner, as Trevor and I washed dishes together, a domestic task our father had always considered beneath him, my brother confided, "You know, for years I thought I was the lucky one, being the favorite. Now I realize how much it cost me, never having to fight for my own identity. We both paid different prices," I acknowledged, "but we get to write our own stories now." The healing process was not linear. There were still difficult conversations, moments of backsliding into old patterns, occasions when boundaries needed to be reasserted. But slowly, gradually, a new foundation was being built. One based on authenticity rather than performance, on mutual respect, rather than power dynamics. Perhaps the most profound change was within myself. The constant need for validation that had driven me for so many years had diminished, replaced by a quiet confidence in my own judgment and worth. Success was no longer something I pursued to prove my father wrong, but something I defined on my own terms: contribution, growth, meaningful connection, and the freedom to chart my own course. Professor Jenkins, who had become a true mentor and friend, summed it up best during our last advisory meeting before his retirement. The most important success is not what you build in the world, Mason, but who you become while building it. By that measure, you have already succeeded, beyond what most achieve in a lifetime. As winter deepened in Boston, I found myself looking forward rather than back. The past had shaped me, but did not define me. The future was unwritten, full of possibilities that extended far beyond the narrow path that had once been prescribed for me. If there is one lesson I have learned through all of this, it is that true success lies not in wealth or status or even achievement, but in the courage to define your own values and live by them regardless of external pressure. Sometimes the Hardest person to stand up to is the one who should have been your greatest advocate. But in that difficult stand lies the key to genuine freedom.